I've been a long-haul truck driver most of my life. 25 years of driving across the country, through deserts, jungles, and frozen mountains. I've driven through riots, floods, even wild animal zones. But nothing comes close to what I experienced on the Shimla highway. It was the winter of 2011. I had a late delivery to make, electrical goods from Delhi to Shimla. Shimla roads are tricky in winter. Fog rolls in like a ghost, thick and blinding. But I'd done the route many times. That night, I left from Solon around 1:15 a.m. Roads were empty. Cold winds whispered through the valley. Even the engine seemed quieter than usual. About 40 minutes into the drive, I reached a stretch known locally as Kala Mad. The black turn. Drivers say it's cursed. The curve is sharp, and there have been many accidents. I slowed down, headlights slicing through the fog. That's when I saw her. A woman standing by the roadside. She wore a red shawl over a white salwar kameez. She didn't look scared. Just still. Calm. She raised her hand slowly. Asking for a ride. I should have kept driving. Every instinct told me don't stop. But it was freezing, and she didn't look well. So I stopped. I rolled down the passenger side window and asked, "Madam, where are you going?" She didn't answer. Just opened the door and got in. No sound. No hesitation. I remember thinking, her clothes don't even have snow on them. "Where do you need to go?" I asked again. She looked at me, eyes like black glass, and said just 2 words. "Take me home." I started driving. The fog got thicker. The headlights barely lit the road. My stomach twisted, like something was wrong with the air itself. 5 minutes later, I glanced at the mirror. She was gone. Just like that. The seatbelt was still buckled. The door hadn't opened. I slammed the brakes. My heart was hammering. I turned on the cabin light, nothing in the seat. But it was freezing cold inside the truck, like I was surrounded by ice. Then, out of nowhere, the radio turned on. A low, static-filled voice whispered, "Thank you for the ride." That was it. I floored it. Didn't stop till I reached a roadside tea stall, maybe 20 kilometers ahead. I staggered out, visibly shaken. The owner looked at me and asked if I was okay. I told him what happened. The woman. The red shawl. The voice. He went pale. "You picked up Pushpa," he said. I asked who that was. He told me the story. Greater than 20 years ago, a young woman named Pushpa was returning home from her in-laws. The car she was in lost control at Kala Mad. It flipped and rolled down the cliff. Her body was never found. Since then, drivers report seeing a woman in red late at night, asking for a ride. Some say she appears in the back seat. Others say she walks alongside moving cars. But all agree on one thing. If you ignore her, you crash. People who pass that curve without stopping often lose control or report brake failure. Some die. Some survive. But no one forgets. I still have the dashcam from that night. I reviewed the footage 100 times. Around 2:02 a.m., the passenger door opens by itself. No one gets in. But for exactly 4 minutes, the passenger seat is pressed down, like someone was sitting there. There's also an audio clip, muffled, but real. You hear a soft voice say, "You took me home, thank you." I never drove that road again. Changed my entire route. And every time I drive at night now, I keep one eye on the roadside. Just in case she's still looking for one last ride. I was 14 when we moved into my grandfather's house after he passed. It was this old Victorian-style home in Brisbane, tucked between overgrown trees and silence. I remember the first time I walked inside, it didn't feel like a home. It felt like we were intruding, like the house knew we didn't belong. My dad was thrilled. "This place has history," he'd say. But my mom, she was uneasy from the beginning. She hated going down to the basement. That's where the old furniture was stored. Decades of antiques, most of them covered in thick white sheets. And right in the middle was the mirror. It was massive. 6 feet tall, thick wooden frame, and carvings of strange symbols that looked like twisted vines or snakes. It leaned against the stone basement wall, tilted slightly forward, almost like it was trying to look at you. The glass was cloudy, warped around the edges. And when you stood in front of it, your reflection moved just a split second too late. I thought I imagined it at first. Until the third or fourth time. A week into living there, weird things started happening. The dog refused to go near the basement door. He'd growl at it in the middle of the night, fur raised, teeth bared. The lights in the hallway above would flicker, only when the basement door was open. And then came the whispers. I heard them first. Just faint sounds, like wind. Then words. My name. One night, I went down alone. Just to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. The basement was silent. Cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones. I stood in front of the mirror. I stared. And my reflection stared back. But it blinked slower. And then, it smiled. I didn't. I screamed and ran upstairs. Of course, my parents didn't believe me. Old mirrors do weird things, Dad said. You're scaring yourself, Mom added. But then it happened to my little brother. He came upstairs crying, saying, "The man in the mirror told me not to leave." He had a scratch on his arm. Deep. Like a claw had grazed him. That's when my mom put her foot down. She told my dad, "Get rid of that mirror." He refused. Said it belonged to his grandfather. Said it was valuable. So she called the priest. The priest refused to enter the basement. He stood at the top of the stairs, clutching his cross. Said there was something not right with that room. Told us to get rid of the mirror immediately. That night, we all slept in the living room. Every hour, we heard knocking from the basement. Not random banging. 3 knocks. Then silence. 3 knocks. Then silence. At 3:17 a.m., the mirror shattered. We ran downstairs. The glass was broken, everywhere. But what chilled me to the bone was what was behind it. The mirror had been leaning against a wall. But behind the frame, there was a hole. Not a hole in the wall. A tunnel. A dark, narrow tunnel made of bricks and dirt. No one had ever built it. No one knew it was there. And in that tunnel were scratch marks. Like someone, or something, had been clawing its way toward the mirror. We sealed the hole immediately. Burned the frame. Buried every piece of glass in a field miles away. After that, the house changed. The cold left. The lights stopped flickering. No more whispers. But the damage was done. My brother still has nightmares. He draws the mirror sometimes, still remembers the man inside. My mom won't talk about it. And my dad? He kept one shard of the glass. Said it was for history. 2 months later, he started sleepwalking. Talking in a voice that wasn't his. A low, slow, inhuman whisper. One night, he stood in front of the bathroom mirror and said, "It's not over." We moved. Threw away every mirror in the house. That was 20 years ago. And yet sometimes, I swear I see someone in the mirror behind me. Not me. Not anyone human. Just a shape. Watching. Waiting. If you ever come across an antique mirror, don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't let your reflection smile first. I've worked in hospitals for over 15 years. Night shifts. Trauma wings. Cardiac units. I've seen death. I've seen miracles. But nothing prepared me for room 721. I started at St. Germain Medical Center in Chicago in 2006. It was an old building, most of the floors had been renovated, but the 7th floor still had its original 1960s layout. The staff called it the cold floor. On my first night, one of the senior nurses pulled me aside. "If you get assigned to room 721, she said, keep the door closed. Don't linger." I laughed it off. Figured it was just hazing for the new night nurse. But it wasn't a joke. Everyone avoided that room. Patients who stayed there reported strange things, whispers, screams from the vents, and shadows under the bed. And there was a pattern. If a patient stayed in room 721 longer than 3 nights, they'd code. Sometimes it was explainable. Sometimes, not at all. One night, I was asked to monitor room 721 because the floor was overstaffed. I hesitated. But I said yes. The patient was a man named Mr. Diaz. Stroke survivor. Stable. Funny guy. Said he loved late-night TV and the quiet hours. I did my rounds. 12:30 a.m., vitals were normal. 2 a.m., still fine. At 2:47 a.m., I walked in to check on him again. The room was ice cold. The monitor began to glitch. Heartbeat readings spiked for no reason. Then dropped. Mr. Diaz was awake. Eyes wide. He was staring at the ceiling. I walked to his side and asked, "Mr. Diaz, are you all right?" He didn't respond. Just pointed toward the vent and whispered, "They're watching me." "Who's watching you?" he said. "The ones that crawl. They come from the ceiling." Before I could say anything, the overhead light flickered. There was a sharp buzzing sound, then silence. The ECG flatlined. We performed a full code. Tried to bring him back for 12 minutes. Nothing. But here's the part one still can't explain. When I leaned over to begin compressions, I felt something cold wrap around my wrist. Like a hand. I looked down. There was no one there. Just a red mark, like fingers, burned into my skin. Security footage from the hallway shows something even stranger. At 2:44 a.m., just before I entered room 721, the motion sensor inside recorded movement. No one had entered. But a long shadow moved across the room. From the ceiling, to the bed. After Mr. Diaz's death, I requested a transfer off that floor. I got it. But not before I learned the truth about room 721. The room used to be part of the psychiatric wing, decades ago. Before renovations. Patients were restrained there, and forgotten. One patient in particular, a woman in her 30s, died in that room. She wasn't discovered for days. When they found her, she had clawed through the vent above the bed with her bare hands, trying to escape. They sealed the incident. Changed the room number. Pretended it never happened. But some of us know. Nurses whisper about it in break rooms. Janitors refuse to clean it past sunset. And patients? They still talk about the woman in the ceiling. A year later, another nurse, Andrea, had a breakdown after her shift. She claimed someone had crawled down the wall in room 721 and whispered into her ear, "You're next." She quit the next morning. That room is now permanently locked. But sometimes, when I pass that hallway on the way to the elevator, I hear the call button beeping. Over and over. There's no patient in there. No bed. No monitor. Just a sealed, empty room. With a vent that never stops dripping. And a voice that says, "I'm still here." I never liked the woods. But I went anyway. My best friend, Rajiv, had been begging me for months to join him and his cousin on a camping trip deep inside Black Pine Forest, up in Himachal Pradesh. Locals call it Kala Van, the Black Forest. They say people go in and don't come out. No animals live there. No birds sing. Just silence. But Rajiv thought it was perfect. No noise, no tourists, just nature, he said. We packed light. Tents, food, flashlights, and a solar charger. No weapons. That was mistake number 1. It took us 3 hours to reach the site. By the time we set up camp, the sun had already dipped below the tree line. And that's when I noticed something strange. No sound. Not a single chirp. Not even wind. Just dead silence. Like the trees were holding their breath. That night, we sat around the fire, laughing, telling stories. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Like we were being watched. From everywhere, and nowhere. Around midnight, Rajiv's cousin, Pranav, said he had to pee. He grabbed a flashlight and walked into the woods. We waited. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Too much chai, Rajiv joked. But his voice was tense. After 25 minutes, we went looking. We followed his footprints, easy to spot in the soft pine floor. They led to a clearing. And stopped. Completely. No struggle. No dragging. Just a set of footprints that ended in the middle of the clearing. Like he had been lifted off the ground. We called his name. Shouted. Nothing. Then we heard it. A whistle. High-pitched. Melodic. Not human. Like something trying to mimic human whistling, but slightly off. I froze. It came from the trees. The tops of the trees. Rajiv whispered. We need to go. We sprinted back to camp. But when we got there, our fire was out. Our tents were sliced open. Not torn, sliced. Like with a blade. And on the ground was Pranav's flashlight. Still on. Covered in something black. Sticky. Thick. Smelled like rot. We didn't sleep that night. Just sat back to back with our backs to a rock, flashlights pointed at the trees. Around 3 a.m., Rajiv nudged me. Don't panic, he said. But look at that tree. I turned slowly. There was something clinging to it. About 10 feet off the ground. Thin. Elongated. Pale skin. Head too large. Limbs like twigs. And its face. It didn't have one. Just a blank space where eyes and a mouth should be. Then, it turned its head toward us. Slowly. Like a puppet on a string. We ran. Left everything, bags, food, phones. We ran for what felt like hours, not even sure where we were going. But somehow, by sunrise, we stumbled out onto a dirt road and flagged down a passing truck. The forest never gave Pranav back. The police searched. Drones. Dogs. Volunteers. No scent. No trace. Nothing. Locals told us stories after. Of the thing in the forest. How it doesn't kill you. It takes you. Leaves your mind behind, but not your body. And every time I sleep now, I see that tree again. That shape. Clinging like a spider. Watching. Waiting. If you ever hike near Black Pine Forest and hear a whistle from above, don't look up. Don't run. Just pray you weren't chosen.